Welcome to the third part of Sign In with Apple series. In this video, we are going to solve this problem of no credentials available for login. But before that, let us understand what is ASAuthorizationAppleIDCredential. Apple ID credential. It has few properties: user, full name, email, real user status, identity token, authorization code, and state. Let us understand each property briefly. Starting with the user, it's a unique and stable identifier. Same identifier across all the applications of the same developer team. So if you are having 3 applications under the same developer team, so in all the 3 applications, whenever you do sign in with Apple, you will receive the same user identifier. This can be used as a primary key as well. Full name. Ask for it if it is required. User can share any name. Whenever you try to sign in with Apple for the first time, you have the edit option to edit this name. Email. Ask for the email as per your requirements. It's not always mandatory to ask email and full name. Ask only if you really need it. User can share the actual email associated with the Apple ID. User can also use hide my email feature. It creates an hidden email address something @privaterelay.appleid.com that will route to your inbox, your original inbox. It can handle replies too. The emails are verified by Apple, so you don't need to worry about that. Sometimes, some of the Apple ID don't have the emails, they only have the phone number. So we need to handle the fallback case for them as well. Real user status. Confidence indicator on how likely the user is real. So there are 3 types. One is likely real, it means it's a real user. Unknown, it means that the device is unable to identify whether it's real or not, but for the unknown case also, you would also like to treat the user as a real user. Unsupported, this is something which the user is unsupported and the OS is not able to identify, so this is not a real user. Identity token, it's a JSON web token, JWT. It contains the user information and most of the data that our server needs. We'll see this in detail later on. Authorization code, it's a short-lived single-time code and it can be used to fetch the access and refresh tokens. Finally, state. As described earlier as well, it's like an arbitrary string and this is just used to validate the request within the application. So while generating the request, we set the state, and when we receive the Apple ID credential in the callback of the delegate, then we match the state which we generated. So just to validate the request whether this is a valid request from the application or not. That's it. There is one more property in the ASAuthorizationAppleIDCredential, user age range. So it's of type AS user age range and it is available after iOS 17 and plus. So if we check this AS user age range, it has 3 cases: child, not child, and unknown. So for me, every time it is returning unknown. Maybe in future it might work because it has no documentation as such, but for me it is coming as unknown. Maybe for the Apple IDs which are 18 and less, it may return child. I'm not sure of that, but for me it's unknown. One important thing with AS authorization Apple ID credential, these 3 properties are only returned for the first time. They are not returned when you are doing sign in with Apple second time. It's only available for a new sign in response, and while you are already an existing user, you will get a full name as nil, email as nil, and real user status as unknown. Starting with the user identifier, so this is the delegate which is only called when the authorization at Apple's end is a success. Okay, so let user identifier equals to credential.user, let full name credential.fullname, And full name is person name components, and it has further given name, family name, all in string. So you can print it out and see. For the time being, I'll keep this as full name. Let's state. So this is the state which we sent in the request, if you remember, credential.state. Before that, let me write email. Okay, let real user status, real user status. Now let us fetch the identity token. So if let data credential.identity token. So identity token is in data, and I need to convert this identity token in string format. String dot init, and I'll use the data encoding. So data and encoding will be UTF-8, and if that is, then I'll have the identity token. So for the time being, I'll just print the identity token, identity token. Okay, and similarly for the auth code, authorization code, and this is also a data auth code. Okay, so we have everything. We have identity token, auth code, and let us print the names as well. So now let us run the code and see what all things are printed on the console. Okay, so here obviously no credentials available for login, because in the view did load this particular check for existing accounts is called, but we don't have any credentials yet. Now let us click on sign in with Apple. Okay, and I'm keeping the name as it is, and I'm choosing hide my email. Okay, and then when I click on continue, it will just verify with my face ID, and then you can see a lot of stuff here. Okay, so we got the user identifier, my full name, the given name and family name, the email, which is obviously the hide my email, private relay Apple ID, real user status. So like I said, real user status is 2, which means I am likely real. So when you go here and you see, so 2 means likely real. Okay, and now user age range is 0. So in the video itself, so I told you earlier as well that okay, this is 0. I'm not getting a not child and child, so I'm getting an unknown. I'm not sure why, but I'm getting the unknown for the user range value. It's identity token and the auth code. So if you copy this identity token, and if I open a certain browser, I'll just minimize it. I'll choose this jwt.io, which is used to decode the JWT tokens, and since it's a JWT token, you can see that the algorithm is RS256, and I have all my details here. So we will discuss this identity token in detail in the upcoming videos of this series, but for the time being, you can see that all the details, sub, nonce, whatever the things we have passed, they are all there. Okay, let us go back to the code. And now when I am authenticated, but I think I missed one thing here, the state. So you can see here, if self.state double equals to credential.state, then only I should be allowed, or if it is not equal, then I should return myself. But this should be equal, then only we should parse the data. So this state is something which is actually validating your request. So I'll just write here return, and now let us revoke the token from the settings for the time being. I'll go to general, click on my name, sign in and security, sign in with Apple, and my app will be somewhere here. Yeah, this is the app, and I need to stop using Apple ID so that we can test it from the starting. Now let us test it again, and I'll just put a debugger here. Okay, I click on sign with Apple. I'll just choose hide my email again. So now once I'm here, so let us see what is coming in this state. So when I write po self dot state, so this is this one, and whatever returned in the credential, and this is also the same, right? So they are not different. So this means that this request is validated. So whatever the state you are sending in the request, it is being validated in the authorization Apple ID credential callback. So this is the response coming from the Apple, and it is saying that the request which you have initiated is a genuine request, and this is generated from your device, and you can validate with the state variable. So this is how we use state, so that we can be so sure that the request is generated from our device and it is not, any kind of a replay attack. For the nonce, it is used to secure the request but at the server end. State, on the other hand, is done at the client end. So now I have again revoked the token from the settings, and I don't have my application in the settings. Let us try sign in with Apple again, and I'll getting the complete sheet of share my email, hide my email, etc. And I can also edit the name if I want here, but let's keep the same, and let us continue with Apple, hide my email, and I got all the details here, right? Now when I kill the application, or when I terminate the application and relaunch it, so from the view did load, when I call this check for existing accounts, so basically it is giving me the saved sign in with Apple already associated with my application. So in the applications, when let's say you delete the application and you come back to the application again, so this is one of the good experience that that allows the user not to create duplicate accounts. It prevents the duplicate accounts, because when you come on this login page, this particular method will check that if you have any Apple IDs already authenticated and associated with this application, so it just pops up. So this is with the Apple ID request, but what is with the password request? So we don't have anything with the password, and we don't have for example, if let's say we save anything on the credential side as well, then what should happen? So currently I don't have any passwords for this particular application, but let me go in the settings and save some of the passwords and then check whether they are also coming or not. Okay, also when I click on this email, so if you see, it's not populating any user or any email or any password associated with this account. So first let us add some credentials and then see whether it is being populated or not. On clicking the password, I am getting the entire list, and I can autofill any of the password, but I want my application's password to be autofilled here itself. It should detect the user. So how we can do it, and how we can make use of this ASPasswordCredential, let us check that out first. ASPasswordCredential. It has two properties, user and password. Username of the credential, and fetch from the keychain saved credentials, and similarly the password, it's again the password of the credential, and it is again fetched from the keychain saved credentials. Okay, so two things I am adding. One, I am making this email field text content type as email so that it can auto fetch the email, and password as text content type dot password. This is for the autofilling part. Now when I run the application, so this is fine. Now again nothing is coming on, and no password and nothing. I do have, if I kill the application and if I run the application again, I do have one credential saved, but this is my Apple ID. Okay, that is fine. This is my Apple ID which I just authenticated, and that's why my check existing function is actually making use of this AS authorization Apple ID provider, but it's not making the use of AS authorization password provider. So let us see like why and how we can make use of this as well. One very important thing about AS password credential. This will only work when you have set the web credentials in the Apple App Site Association file, the AASA file. It will return with no credentials available for login if the web credentials are not set in the Apple App Site Association file, even if we have the credentials in the keychain for the domain. And it's a very important thing which is being said in one of the WWDC videos, which many of us might have missed that, and we always wonder why the password is not autofilling or why AS password credential is never working. I have a domain darshika.co.in and I have hosted Apple App Site Association file, and this is my app ID, which is this is my team ID and this is my application ID, and I have kept this in web credentials. Okay, so this is very important. Now I'll copy this and I'll add some passwords in my keychain. Okay, settings, passwords, and add. So I need to give the website name. So this is my website name, and let us make the user, let's say Rajan Apple 1. Okay, so this is my first user and I'll just add it, and that's it. So it is, if you see in the password section again, so this is added here. Okay, now first let us delete the application. So this is my identifier which I created in my first video. Now I had to check the associated domains as well and save it, and this is saying that I have to create my provisioning profile again. Okay, so processing, and the provisioning profile which I created was this, and I just need to edit it and download it, and after the download I just drag drop on the Xcode and it should work just fine. Now coming back to the sign and capabilities, I'll click on all first and I'll write associated domains. So it just created an associated domain for me. Now what I need to do, I need to add the web credentials in this particular domain. So how I can do that? I need to write web credentials colon and the name of my domain without any HTTPS or anything, just the name of the domain. Let's go back to Xcode, and that's it. Now let us run the application and see the result. So we got the result. We have now two things. One is the Apple ID which we have saved, and one is the saved credentials in the keychain, which is Rajan Apple 1 with the user and the password. Okay, and when I close it and when I open this email text box as well, then you will also see the Rajan Apple 1 populated here, and when I click on it, then it will just populate my Rajan Apple 1, and obviously the password is not shown because of the screen recording restrictions. But ultimately, you can do these two ways. Let me kill the application and run it again, and you can see that both the Apple ID and the user which is saved in the credentials is now populating. So let us again run the application. So yeah, we have both the users. Now let me click on this, and let me go here in the AS password credentials, and let me put a checkbox here in the delegate of did complete with authorization, and I continue. So it will come here, yes, and it will print the user and it will print the password. And this is how you can verify by sending the user and the password to your backend and make use of this AS password credential. This is the basic use of AS password credential. Okay. Now let me stop this and add one more password. Okay, let's go to the password and click on new password. Let's make it Rajan Apple 2, and let's take this domain in which I have hosted my Apple app site association file and just copy this. So now I have two passwords with me, right? Now let me run the application and see we have two passwords now. One is the Apple ID and other two are the saved passwords from the keychain, and you can choose any. So this is how it works. Now when I click on email, so it will show the one which is added first initially, and when I click on this key box, the password icon, then it will show the UI like this. For this particular application, it is suggesting two passwords because we have added this domain in the web credential and we have used in this associated domains. So that's why it is working like that. Okay, so you can see that sometimes let me kill the application and run again. So sometimes what happens in the initial controller, sometimes, not every time, that this particular keychain, Apple is not able to pick this keychain up. So basically when you are calling this check for existing accounts function, so sometimes it happens that these are not popping and only your this particular Apple ID gets popped up. So for that, either you can have a small delay of 1 second or 0.5 second and then wait, and then it should work fine. Or generally what happens, it depends, like what is your first screen. So when I am opening the application, this is my first screen and it is coming right up front and I'm calling it from the view did load. So 1 in 100 times it may happen that when you open the application and from the Xcode, means you run the application, then this might not populate. Like if I run the application here again, so yeah, it is coming for the time being. But sometimes it happens that these two credentials, Rajan Apple 1 and Apple 2, they are not picked up from the keychain, maybe due to some delay or something. Let me delete the app and retry it. Maybe I will be able to replicate that case as well. Let me run it. Let us see. No, I am not able to, but yeah, if you guys are facing something like that, then you can just call this existing accounts function with a delay, and it won't happen in the production level, because in the production level you are not debugging anything from the Xcode and you are simply just calling the credentials for the accounts and it will search for it right away. So this is how we make use of this AS password credential, and we can send the user and the password for the authentication purpose. The other one is the ASAuthorizationAppleIDCredential explained earlier in the video. So these two modes are used for sign in with Apple. This also helps you to prevent the duplicate accounts, because when you open the application and you go in the login screen, for example, you land on the login screen, so automatically you should suggest the users that earlier your domain or this application is pointing to whichever domain you already have these users. So rather than a user create a new account, he can see that whatever is the best account for him, he can choose it from the below sheet, which is auto populating by the credentials from the keychain and from the Apple ID. So this is one of the good ways to prevent the duplicacy of the accounts. And make sure that whenever you are adding the action for the Apple button, you don't have to add the request for the password. The password request should only be added when you are checking the existing accounts thing. So then you have to add both the requests to check whether any of the credentials are there or not. So in this case, I have both the credentials, Apple ID and uh, the keychain credentials. Let us remove the Apple ID credentials. I'll just revoke the account and then let's see what happens. It will give me only the keychain credential accounts. Now let me run the application again, and you can only see that we are getting only the two accounts which are saved in the keychain credentials and not the Apple account, because I have just revoked the tokens from the settings. This is how we make use of both these password providers, Apple ID provider and the password provider. We'll understand more about the identity token and how we can verify it, and also the authorization code in the next video.